Welcome to the Springfield Learning Model Blended Learning Session 1. This is the first of 3 learning parts in which all teachers will engage this year. Session 1 is approximately 2 hours in length.
Springfield Public Schools is a leader, recognized as one of the tops in education in the state and in the country. It's the largest school district in the state. It hasn't been a simple process or an easy process to get there. It takes collaboration, it takes innovative techniques like the learning model. It takes a lot of people putting a lot of hard work together and support from the board and support from the community. Without community support, we wouldn't be the recognized leader that we are today. I think our community has very high expectations for the school district in general. They have high expectations for us as elected board members. They have high expectations for our teaching staff and support staff, and they have high expectations for the students who come out of here, our product. And we try to meet those expectations. It's always difficult, and especially in times of economic challenge, but I think everyone in the district has stepped up to the plate, and we hope to meet the community's expectations, and we hope to exceed them. I think many of the skills our graduates will need in the future haven't even been discovered yet. So instead of teaching them specific skills or a skill set, we need to teach them critical thinking, we need to teach them communication, problem solving, because we may teach something now that is obsolete in 5 to 10 years, which is not too far off for some of our graduates, and where will they be? So if we can teach them to develop their potential, to reason, good thought processes, then we're going to produce good graduates. Well, I think collaboration is key. Just as teachers teach better using collaborative techniques, learning from the best of the best and learning from their peers, students can do the same thing. Once students graduate and they're out in the real world, they're not going to be in a box, pigeonholed, doing one single task. They're going to have to learn to work with their peers, to work with their superiors, work with their subordinates, and you can't do that without collaboration. It's a critical skill to learn and for us to be able to teach instead of throwing them onto the job or professional school or wherever it may be and having them learn it later on. Well, there are 3 important parts to the learning model: critical thinking, collaboration, and communication. The learning model doesn't work without all 3. All 3 are important skills for our teachers to have and to be able to teach and for our students to learn.
The Springfield Public School learning model is going to be critical to all the children of our future, the 21st century. With hard work and dedication, that's going to go a long way. But with education, you can go so much farther. And as a business, you're looking for people that can think on their feet with critical thinking, that can collaborate with others, work well with others regardless of backgrounds or diversities. And of course, communication is imperative regardless of what business you go into. Being able to communicate with customers, with your fellow peers, and with others is the most important part of your job every day. In today's environment, high expectations I think are just a standard. There's people that are out there just trying to get by and do just enough to succeed. Setting higher goals and setting higher expectations for our students is only going to make them better in the workforce and help them promote and continue to do better things. The second part, being centered relationships, is really about working with one another. It's about having that one-on-one relationship with your peers, with your customers, and really goes back to communication, being able to identify and understand one another, both the way you're thinking, what my expectations are, and just being able to have a good working relationship. So Walmart has a giving foundation, and one of the pillars for that foundation is education. We understand that, again, the future of our success is in the schools now, whether it be grade school, high school, and so on. And so when we found out about the new learning model, we felt very strongly about getting involved and helping take this to the next level. So we were able to give a donation of $25,000, not just to benefit Springfield Public Schools, but taking it personal to benefit us in the future. If our workforce can graduate and go to college and have these three learning principles, the communication, the collaboration, the critical thinking, they are that much more valuable to our workforce.
Well, we're hoping a critical part of the learning model, of course, is the adult in that scenario. And the adult in that scenario must step back and realize that it's a continuum of learning in their own part and their ability to solve problems, to be innovative and creative. And to do that, it's really understanding the excitement around their own appetite. And then to be able to sit back and have a conversation with their peers or with their leadership or basically with research, and really having that conversation and collaborating, and really to be able to do that, then take that same type of entrepreneur, innovative type of approaches into the classroom. You can't bring it into the classroom unless you do it yourself. And it's really a very exciting, challenging and exciting opportunity for us and for the teacher.
To help facilitate our learning today, we've invited some of your colleagues who are instrumental in developing some of the key supporting documents that you're going to learn about in today's session.
These colleagues spent significant time over the last 2 years field testing the capabilities and the teacher-created supporting documents with their students in the classroom setting.
It's important you understand that your colleagues work at different grade levels and in different buildings, and their voices add valuable experience and authentic application of the learning model.
In Springfield Public Schools, we think it's really important to model at the district level the same things we'd like to see in classrooms. So I'd like to share today's learning goals and success criteria with you. In terms of our learning goals today, you'll have an opportunity to reconnect to the visual of the Springfield Public Schools learning model. You'll have an opportunity to understand the operational definitions for the three capabilities, understand how reflective guides can support student learning, understand the uses of innovation configurations, and examine the teacher-created innovation configuration for 21st century capabilities. By the end of this session, you'll be able to explain the visual of the Springfield Public School learning model, discuss the operational definitions for the capabilities, describe how reflective guides can support student learning, explain in your own words the uses of innovation configurations, and apply the innovation configuration to a lesson. Perhaps you noticed a slight shift in language when I framed our learning for today as learning goals and success criteria. Stating learning goals and success criteria aligns with our current practice of letting students know exactly what they are going to learn and what successful learning looks like. Learning goals are the targets we set for what we want students to know. As you consider learning goals, you might ask yourself what you want the students to learn from this lesson. Success criteria are what it looks like when the target is met. You might ask yourself how you will know if the students have accomplished the learning goal. As we become more intentional about learning outcomes, learning goals and success criteria will support students in learning and teachers in thoughtful planning.
From the very beginning, we need to realize that this community supports its children, but also they see the children as its future. And we've been collaborating with the community, and the community has been working very closely with us and see collaboration as a critical piece, and they see that needs to come out of the classroom or go into the classroom. The same thing is true for communication, problem solving, innovation, critical thinking. And the community has given us really the support and direction to be able to do that. And so we need to realize as teachers, as leaders, as students, that this is a very, very something that the community strongly supports. And we are looking forward to their support and employing our children in the future.
The Springfield Learning Model is about becoming more intentional about identifying the processes and capabilities key for success in the 21st century. Well, as an employer, we have a responsibility to our employees, and it's really in our best interest to demonstrate to them What does good look like, and how do I become successful in my job regardless of what that is? So the learning model is really our way of communicating that, which in and of itself is a part of the learning model, the communication of clear goals and success criteria. So if we can consistently communicate to all employees our picture, our vision of how they are expected to accomplish their work every day, ultimately they will produce a better product. Your facilitator will now pause the video in order for you to reconstruct the model with your colleagues.
Thank you for taking time to review the learning model as a whole. It is important to remember what the learning model and these 21st century capabilities are and what they are not. The learning model is about intentionality around the capabilities, allowing us to keep these vital skills in the forefront of our minds when lessons are planned and in the students' minds as learning occurs. The capabilities are aligned and embedded in existing curriculum, lessons, and assessments. The capabilities are interrelated. They go hand in hand, supporting and adding depth and meaning to each other. The capabilities are not random acts of teaching and learning. The model is a systematic, sustained, intentional approach to learning. The capabilities are not separate lessons taught in isolation from our guaranteed and viable curriculum. Remember, the core and center point of the learning model is our rigorous and relevant curriculum. Now let's begin our focus on the 3 C's. Our next learning goal will be facilitated by Mrs. Nicole Lemon, media teacher at Central High School. Mrs. Lemon served on the teacher focus team that created the documents that you will be introduced to today. She also field tested these documents in her classroom and gave valuable feedback on her experience.
Today I want to take you through 2 short learning activities that those of us who worked on the writing of the IC experienced as we worked to create meaningful tools for students and teachers as they begin to engage in critical thinking. Please find page 2 in your guide. Now consider this prompt. If you were to create a definition of critical thinking, what words, phrases, or concepts would you include? What words or phrases would you hope or expect to see in a definition of critical thinking? Please jot down those thoughts individually without sharing yet. Take a moment at your tables to share out key words or phrases that you might hope to see in a quality definition of critical thinking. Rally Robyn with a partner. Please turn to page 4 of the binder to see the operational definition of critical thinking. You probably had many of the key words, concepts, or phrases you see in the district definition of critical thinking. Think about how this definition compares to the words you brainstormed. When we first started working with the operational definition of critical thinking, I think it was very important to see that it is allowing for a common language with teachers. You know, when we think about critical thinking, it can be defined differently by every single person in the district. So it's important to have a common language. But what's good about it is broad enough to encompass lots of different classrooms and lots of different ways of thinking critically. The definition of critical thinking is a necessary starting point to consider what the capability is. However, perhaps more importantly, what are those behaviors, attitudes, actions that good critical thinkers do? What is it that they do to think through and solve problems and make important decisions? As we consider these questions, it became evident that a tool was needed to outline specific behaviors that we might observe in ourselves and others when they engage in sound critical thinking. So, reflective guides were created, edited, tested, and retested in classrooms. The guide you will be studying today is geared for high school and adults. However, reflective guides for primary, upper grades, and middle school have also been created by our colleagues who teach those specific grade levels. Before you read the reflective guide for critical thinking, jot down a decision you recently made or a problem that you have recently solved that you feel was successful. Maybe you bought a car or a house or chose an intervention to use with a particular student. You might notice these are fairly objective or academic decisions and not emotional ones. Take a moment to silently think about your decision problem-solving scenario. Please use the space provided on page 2 to record the decision you recently made. Now, test the reflective guide for critical thinking found on page 5 of your binder using your recent problem. Notice, and how many of these actions did you engage as you thought about and worked through your personal decision or problem? You will have 3 minutes to think through the guide while testing your decision. At your tables, take 4 minutes to share your thinking about the reflective guide as it applies to your scenario. Think about your own critical thinking process and what parts that are in the guide that you used and what parts that you didn't. The guide we just used for your thinking is the high school adult version. However, because this is a student document, teams of teachers have worked to create leveled guides for primary, intermediate, and middle school as well.
The reflective guide, I think, can be a very integral part of the classroom with students so that they're very familiar with that tool, and it's something that can help to teach them self-reflection processes and tools, and also to guide and focus the instruction for the teacher. I think specifically it can be used very easily and very quickly in small group settings to kind of help them to process that critical thinking, and also, of course, in any lab work with science or content, social studies or health areas, as well as lab work that occurs in math. I specifically used it in writer's workshop. I felt like that was an area where it could fit in a small group writing setting so that they could be working collaboratively and communicating with one another, but still to be using those critical thinking skills to identify how to best research their topic and how to organize that information, and to just self-assess for those students in the first grade level, and to be able to then identify where their needs were to make further improvements and keep working, and also for myself to see where they needed more support and more scaffolding. There are multiple values, I think, that can be found using the reflective guide in the classroom, one of which is the student ownership that it creates, the ownership over their thinking and their learning, and therefore the instruction that will occur in the classroom to guide both their thinking so that as they self-reflect, students can identify where they need to improve or where their strengths are, and then the teacher can also see those needs to provide more support. An additional value is the confidence I have as a teacher in providing it to students, knowing that it's been adapted from the high school version by teachers so that it can meet the needs and be easily understood by first grade students and primary students K through 2. Not only was it adapted by those teachers, but looked at by various levels of teachers and from varying departments, so that it's been edited, and I feel very confident giving it to students and knowing that with my instruction that they'll be able to successfully and easily use it.
I see the reflective guide as a tool that I as an instructor can help and give my students so that they can self-check, self-assess, so that when we're talking about critical thinking, communication, collaboration, it gives them a tool to check themselves to see if they are doing those 3 things and at a high level. It's going to kind of bump them up, if you will. I see the reflection guide as a tool for my students. The middle school students are going to be using a middle school reflection guide. It's been written for them by middle school teachers. And the more they use it, the more they're going to be thinking about all of the strategies, critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and it will become second nature, or that's my hope, that it'll become second nature so that when they're using it, they're improving on all of those 3 capabilities.
As you look at the reflective guide that best meets the needs of your students, think about an upcoming unit or project in your classroom. How might you use the reflective guide to increase intentionality around the capability of critical thinking? Facilitators, please pause the video to allow your teachers to have a structured conversation.
Thank you for engaging in learning about the critical thinking capability of the Springfield Public Schools learning model. This same process of defining, creating reflective guides, and field testing was done with the additional capabilities collaboration and communication by a diverse team of teachers last year. Now that you know the process and the thinking behind the creation of both the operational definitions and the reflective guides, please take a look at the definitions for collaboration and communication in the resource section of your binder. First, read the definitions of each. With a partner, discuss this question. What stands out to you about one or both of these definitions? Because the interrelatedness between collaboration and communication is so strong, we created one reflective guide for these capabilities. As you read through this reflective guide silently, please identify specific places where you see collaboration and specific places where you see communication. It can be found in the resource section of your binder. Now, with a partner, discuss how this reflective guide might help your students think about communication and collaboration in their own work.
We have accomplished 3 of our success criteria for today. We can explain the visual of the SPS learning model, discuss the operational definitions for the capabilities, and describe how reflective guides can support student learning. Let's reconnect to the overarching purpose behind the SPS learning model by considering this question. As teachers become more intentional and systematic with the capabilities from kindergarten through 12th grade, how might that benefit student preparation for the 21st century? Your facilitator will now pause the video in order to give you the opportunity to have a structured conversation. Once teachers had worked together to create the reflective guides of student proficiencies for each capability, then the next question became, what needs to happen in a classroom to foster those skills? We needed a tool that could serve teachers as they became more intentional with the capabilities. That's what an innovation configuration does. Our next learning goal is to understand the innovation configuration for 21st century capabilities. We will know we have succeeded with our learning goal when you actually use the innovation configuration in your classroom. Innovation configurations are not foreign to Springfield teachers. Innovation configurations are in place for such instructional practices as differentiated instruction, cooperative learning, and continuous classroom improvement. ICs also exist in Springfield to paint a clear picture of implementing curriculum, such as 6+1 writing, reader's workshop, and guided reading. Essentially, a carefully constructed innovation configuration gives a valuable big picture or bird's eye view of an initiative. Horde and Hall define an innovation configuration as a tool to promote a common understanding on the main characteristics of an innovation. It can help guide you and gauge you and your students' progress in implementing an initiative. So, the innovation configuration for the learning model capabilities supports all of us as we work to have common expectations around the intentional implementation of the SPS learning model. We can assess our own practices and the behaviors of our students, set goals, and check fidelity of implementation using this tool. To explain further, notice how an innovation configuration might be used in classrooms. An IC can be used to describe a best practice. It can help you understand all the pieces of an innovation. It can also help you set long-range and short-range goals. As you're using your IC to reflect, you might find that you're lower in some areas. This can help you set goals. An IC can also help you establish realistic expectations so that you're using all pieces of the best practice or the innovation. Sometimes we find when teachers are implementing innovations, they implement part of the practice very well and forget other pieces. So an IC can be used to help you remember all the pieces of the innovation. An IC can also help you guide self-assessment as you're lesson planning and reflecting on your lessons after delivery. The IC can help you focus on what to think about and what you might wish to change next time. Finally, an IC can be used to gather data to plan future professional learning. If you're finding yourself lower on the continuum in some areas, those might be great areas for you to focus future professional learning on.
Over 50 teachers from every grade level and content area spent several work sessions over the last year and a half creating, refining, and reflecting on a carefully constructed innovation configuration for the capabilities.
As a member of the team who wrote the innovation configuration, I appreciated the fact that so many from various levels and departments within the district were equally represented on that team, and that everyone was able to have input and also an opportunity to provide feedback and editing. It was looked at many times by multiple eyes, and then it was often changed. It was a really fluid document, so that when there were changes needed, we were able to easily make those and take the opinions of others to be able to do that. So I appreciated the fact that it was looked at by so many and from so many at various levels and perspectives.
I think it's easy for teachers to say, you know, this is something new, something else to do. I got involved with this process because truly they wanted teacher input from the beginning. And it was really great to work on a document for 2 years to perfect it so that we know what it takes to work in a classroom, and then to see it roll out and for teachers to be able to use it. These were created by teachers for teachers to use in their classrooms tomorrow. And really, if you take the time to get to know them and use them, I think it really can improve our teaching.
The task was to create a word picture of what an intentional use of critical thinking, communication, and collaboration in a classroom might look like and sound like. The tool of an IC is to be used as a flashlight to illuminate specifics, not as a hammer to pound things in place. The IC answers the following questions. What might the teachers do to promote the capabilities in students? What might the classroom environment look like? What might we see students doing, saying? What might assessment look, sound like? During the creation of the IC, teachers used the Kagan structure carousel brainstorm to brainstorm what the capabilities look like and sound like in classrooms. Each table spent time at each chart focusing on what would later become the ideal column of the IC. In the remaining time, work was done on the limited use column. After many hours of work, the writing team finally has an IC that is ready for you to examine. We would like for you to have the opportunity to examine each section of the IC in detail. The process we will use has been suggested by your colleagues on the IC writing and action research teams. You will review the IC one section at a time. After you have read through the section, we will give you an opportunity to say something about the section with a colleague. It may be something that stood out to you or a question you have. Please turn to Part 1 in your binder and locate the pink page. This page contains the teacher behavior portion of the IC. Please take note of the column headings. You will have 3 minutes to read this section and say something to your partner. Thank you. Now please locate the green page. This page contains the lesson design portion of the IC. You will have 3 minutes to read this section and say something to your partner. Great. Please locate the blue page in Part 1 of your binder. This page contains the assessment portion of the IC. You will have 3 minutes to read this section and say something to your partner. Thank you. Now please locate the yellow page. This page contains the learning environment portion of the IC. You will have 3 minutes to read this section and say something to your partner. Finally, please locate the lavender page in your binder. This page contains the resulting student behaviors portion of the IC. You will have 3 minutes to read this section and say something to your partner. We hope this process, while time-consuming, was helpful in your learning about the IC. The IC writing team felt that it was important to break this learning into chunks. Obviously, the team realized that future use of the IC would be enhanced if the separate portions were consolidated into one document. Please locate the complete IC in the Resources section of your binder.
One of our success criteria for today is to apply the innovation configuration to actual classrooms so we can experience the power of the IC. Since the capabilities align through every grade level, we want you to practice using the IC as you view 2 classrooms engaging students in critical thinking, collaboration, and communication. One classroom reflects our youngest students' learning, and the other classroom our oldest. We intentionally chose video of students engaged in the capabilities so you could have the opportunity to observe the full continuum of learning in SPS. As you watch the first video, make note on your IC of what you think the teacher is doing. You might find some actions in the ideal column, but you might also find examples of work from the other 2 columns, or rows that are not represented at all during the short video clip.
What were all those things? Architectural structures. Anthony?
Very old building.
What, very old? Were they all very old?
Except the Arch in St. Louis.
Okay.
That's kind of new.
Okay. And Marty? Okay, landmarks. What does that mean? What's a landmark? Talk to each other about that for just a minute.
I mean, it's so complicated. I can't think of it. It's like figure out a way.
Now I want you to talk to your partner for a minute. When you were watching the Cinematography, I want you to talk with your partner about things you wondered about, if anything came up that you wondered about.
What some of them are, because some of them we didn't really
Okay, share with me some of the things you wondered about. Anthony?
I wondered what like that statue of like the knight and the horse was.
Okay, so it made you wonder more about that. The big, do you guys remember that one with the big horse? Max?
We wondered what some of them are because we're not really familiar with them.
Okay.
A couple.
Okay. If I were to ask you to group all of these things that you saw, if you had to classify them under one name or one title, what would you call them? Talk to your partner.
Very old building.
Okay, help me out. What do you think? What would you call them? Ethan.
Well-built structures.
Well-built structures. Would you find where we were taking notes on, I think the last thing we took notes on was the Eiffel Tower Math Challenge. You would turn to the very next page, and mine's going to be page 10. If you haven't drawn a line down the middle of your page, go ahead and do that for your entry. And would you add the definition monuments on the right side, please? All right, I want to tell you about your challenge for today. Before we actually do our challenge, we're going to do a little bit of research, a little bit more research about monuments so that you have a little more background knowledge. And I'm going to have you guys share that research. Then I'm going to get you started on your challenge. But I thought it would be helpful to see what your challenge is, and that way when you do your research, you have good focus for it. You and your partner are going to be members of a team of engineers, and the President of the United States has asked you to create a monument in Washington, D.C. He wants the monument to be different from all the other monuments. It can be similar, but not exactly the same. He wants it to look a little different. Your job, you and your partner, will need to decide what the purpose of the monument is, and what its function will be, and the form the monument will take. It's after careful planning, then you'll create a model, okay? You will be presenting your plans and your model to the other teams of engineers. It welcomes new people, immigrants to America. Yes, good.
To Memorial, and its function was to honor the armed forces in World War II. And its form was, it's like a fountain, and then they've have like lots of pillars and an arch.
Let's take a minute of reflection time in case you didn't have a chance to mark your IC while you were watching the video. As you watch the second video, you might choose a different symbol to code your findings for the high school example.
And so to kind of help you kind of become more aware of this, we're going to do a little project. And let me pass these out first, and then we'll kind of talk about it, and I'll give you an example of what we're doing. All right, so you're going to construct a periodic table of your own using something that interests you, all right? And you're going to kind of set it up so that it kind of looks like a periodic table. 8 families with common characteristics representing the S, P, and the D blocks. You're going to name your families, like we just talked about. The group 1 metals are known as the alkali metals. We've already talked about the group 18 nonmetals, the noble gases. Those are group names, okay? And so you're going to name yours as well. And then you're going to make a key that explains the families and their characteristics that they have in common. Demonstrate a periodic and group trends. So we kind of talked about some of the periodic and group trends that the periodic table has. And then you're going to create an unknown. And then, so as you describe your periodic table to us, somebody can take that unknown and then place it into the periodic table.
Yeah. Do you need to sketch this out down here, or just have the stuff like the SPD blocks and the families and stuff?
Yeah, kind of sketch it out maybe a little bit.
All right. And so I'm guessing our families don't have to follow exactly like the periodic table.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And do we have to have the same amount of elements as this?
Well, you're going 8 by 6, so yeah, it's not going to be the same number. You're going to have a trend of the different types of, the different shades of the same color, right? And then it's going to have different colors going from left to right, but there's going to be some sort of progression there. I mean, well, it might be that you color, or you do the Roy G. Biv.
Alright, so
Now, go to another person and see how they do. All right, so now, since not everyone has had a chance to see your beautiful work, I want one at a time, you'll come up here and explain what your periodic table was and what the trends were that you had established within that table.
Okay, so I did my periodic table on Disney things. So in the S block, we have like different parks like Epcot and Animal Kingdom. And in the D block, they have the TV shows like on Disney Channel from like back in the 80s all the way till today. And then in the P block, there are Disney movies, and they're all sorted like throughout by either like the year that they opened or the year that the movie or TV show like started running. And the movie section is kind of broken down into more specific categories, but that's basically it.
I did a periodic table of countries. This didn't really cross my mind to have a correlation this way. So, but I categorized it by area and square kilometers because, you know, international doesn't use miles. I have 8 groups. I have a theocracy, which is the Vatican City, communist in the 1950s, socialist, republic, democracy, past military dictatorship, absolute monarchy, constitutional monarchy. My setup of these things is very much like the actual one. We have the name North Korea because it's best Korea, and flag, the symbol, and then the area. And just to do a play on words, the absolute monarchies are noble gases.
Take a minute to complete your marks. Share with a partner what you noticed as you applied the IC to these real classrooms. Each of you will have 1 minute to share. As we complete our learning time today, it might help you to reflect on today's learning goals and success criteria. Thank you for participating in this professional learning session. You should have a deeper understanding of the 3 capabilities of the Springfield Learning Model and an introduction to these tools for your use, the reflective guides and the innovation configuration. In the interim between this blended learning session and session 2, you will have the opportunity to try out these tools with your students. In our next session, we will ask you to reflect on your experimentation with the IC and/or reflective guide in your own classroom. Then you will begin a deeper study of the 4 processes that support the capabilities. As we look at the 4 processes, we will focus on 2 key ideas: know thy impact and seeing learning through the eyes of students. Because this is a 2-part series, we'll look forward to gathering your feedback after session 2.